Thank you, Mr. Bird. And welcome to the ordinary meeting of the Alpine Shire Council on the 5th of October 2021. Could I just remind councillors, I see that you're all on mute at the moment, that just in the background, if you wouldn't mind putting your phones on silent or vibrate or something, thank you. I shall get the CEO to read the following recording and live stream of council meetings. Thank you, Mr. Bird.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All council meetings are filmed with both video and audio being recorded. In common with all narrative during council meetings, verbal responses to congratulations, obituaries, question time will not be recorded in the written minutes. By submitting a question, you consent to your question being read aloud at the meeting. The reasoning behind recording council meetings is, of course, to hold us more accountable and improve the transparency of council's decision-making to our community. The full meeting is being streamed live on Council's YouTube channel, which is Alpine Shire Council, and will also be available on the YouTube channel shortly after this meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Bird. The Alpine Shire Council acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land we are now on, and we pay our respects to elders past and present. We also acknowledge those people who have contributed to the rich fabric of our community and strive to make wise decisions that will improve the quality of life for all. Now, just prior to the confirmation of minutes, I would like to welcome, for those in the Zoom land, Miss Helen Havercroft, who is our newly minted Director of Corporate Performance. And at the same time, I would also like to thank Mr. Will Jeremy, who has been sitting in as the CEO for the previous 2 weeks, but also in his extended role as the Acting Director of Corporate Performance for the last couple of months. And by extension, I would also like to thank Elaine Burridge, who sat in as the Acting Director of Assets, and by extension to that, Mr. Brett Jordan, who sat in as the Acting Director of Corporate Performance for the previous 2 weeks. So having said that, I will now ask for a confirmation of the minutes for the Ordinary Council meeting M10 for the 7th of September 2021 and for the Special Council meeting, which was held on the 21st of September 2021. Could I have a mover, please? Thank you, Councillor Janus, and a seconder. Councillor Hughes. All those in favour? Thank you, that's carried. Right. Any apologies? I see we are all present. Excellent. Obituaries and congratulations. I shall go around the room. Councillor Hughes.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to do a shout out to one of our long-standing locals, Kim Lancaster from Mini Muds. She was awarded the Gold in Product Design Award for the 2021 for the Australian Mumpreneur Awards. And I don't know, like anyone in the Alpine region who has a pair of Mini Muds for their kids, and I know that the daycares use them. They're absolutely fantastic. And you know, she's built this business from scratch, and I think it's really commendable to her. So big congratulations to Kim.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Councillor Prime.
No, none from me. Thank you.
Certainly. Councillor Janus.
No, none from me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A huge congratulations to all of the operators up in the Alpine resorts and Dinner Plain who have been through opening, closing, and so forth, and many different changing rules and regulations for their phenomenal resilience. And yeah, I respect how hard the season has been, and I just really think that resilience and positivity has still shone through, and that's a great reflection on our community here. So well done, and hopefully 2022 is the time for a little bit of an easier time. Thank you.
Yes, concur. Councillor Vincent. Councillor Nicholas.
Just
Right.
to add to Councillor Vincent's, talking about the mountains, it's now snowing up there right now that, now that it's all over. Anyway, I wanted to congratulate, well, actually somebody who's at this table, Councillor Dr. Tony Keeble, and others involved in the education department and rolling out school again, and with a staggered start and working through the whole COVID matters, and the kids who are just about to, launching into their VCE exams. The GAT was today, so there's some pretty it's starting to happen for those kids who are coming to the end of their time at school, and it is not easy for the teachers, it's not easy for the kids, it's not easy for the parents, and I think we're nearly there, and well done, everybody.
Yes, I concur also, Councillor Nicholas. Councillor Keeble.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Nicholas. That is true. The GAT was today, and even one of our children was at the GAT today. So it's great to see the schools and the system still trying as hard as they can to get those young people through the system so they can continue on with their pathways and journeys in life. There's no doubt about that. And I would say, regardless of which side of the fence you sit on, the Alpine Shire is doing a great result in regards to vaccinations. So let's keep it up, is all I can say, regardless of which way you lean. That's all from me, Mr. Mayor Forsyth.
Thanks very much, Councillor Keeble. Item 6, declarations by councillors of any conflict of interest. Do we have any conflicts of interest tonight?
I, Mayor Forsyth, have a conflict of interest on item 8.3.5. Thank you.
Thank you. We shall exclude you from meeting at that point in time. Any other conflicts of interest? No, thank you very much. Right, public questions, item 7. We have 2 questions on notice tonight. One is from Sharon Paul. I'll read this. This was in the order that they were received at council. I'll read the question. Noting council's commitment to access and inclusion, will council fly the rainbow pride flag from the council office on the 17th of May next year, being International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia and Transphobia? Thank you very much, Sharon, and thank you for the heads up for this important day in your calendar. I believe that the council can recognise this by posting on our Facebook page, and if we can get a quick copy of the flag, we could also put the flag in that position as well. So thank you. Yes, I'm sure that that is quite achievable. The other questions. Okay, these are from Gillian Folks, and they refer to a matter that is going to be decided upon tonight regarding the 11 White Star Road, Wandillagong application, planning application. There is some preamble to the questions. The questions, there are 2. Basically, in a preface, they are, I'm asking on behalf of other like-minded residents if Alpine Shire are aware of the negative impact the planning office's proposal to refuse the application for lot will have on families, children, younger and older persons, local clubs and visitors. And the second question is and it's a bit of a preamble here, 5 Acres Restaurant is a relaxing outdoor venue, offers children a fun garden environment, undercover in inclement weather, mini golf, etc. Wineries and hotels do offer the same but with different opening hours. Therefore, morning, afternoon coffees daily for clubs, residents, elderly people, families and visitors. Should not the application for this restaurant be recognised as valuable, as it has proved in the past and more. So can I say to you, Gillian, that I'm sure that the councils are aware in the first instance, in question 1, of all various negative impacts And in part of question 2, yes, and these things will be discussed further during the agenda because it is a major item on our agenda tonight. So thank you very much for those. And I commend you for actually going down the track of putting questions on notice, seeing we don't have public galleries at the moment. So if there is anybody out there that would like questions answered, please get them into the office at the Alpine Shire at least 3 to 4 days prior to a meeting. Thank you. Moving along. Item number 8, Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Charlie Bird. 8.8.1, contracts approved by the CEO and acting CEO up until last week. Thank you, Mr. Bird.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's recommended that Council notes the capital works contracts approved by the CEO and acting CEO, of which there are 6.
Fine, thank you very much. As read, do I have a mover and a seconder for these, please? See a hand. Thank you, Councillor Vincent and Councillor Nicholas. Any discussion on any of these?
Not from me. I think Ron was trying to move it actually, but was just
Apologies,
on. Ron may have something to say. Thank you.
No, thanks, Mr. Mayor. It was just so moved that my screen is not as fast as some of the others, or my finger or something.
Thank you. I will keep that in mind. Councillor Nicholas, you wish to say something?
I did. I just wanted to ask about the car that was purchased from Toyota and ask whether it was a hybrid or electric or petrol or diesel.
Yes, Councillor Nicholas, it is a hybrid car.
Thank you very much.
Any other comments by councillors? No, thank you. I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? Thank you. That's carried. Right. Moving into the... Oh, no, we have another one from the Chief Executive Officer. 8.1.2, the Alpine Shire Council Annual Report 2021. Thank you, Mr. Bird.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is to present Council's annual report for last financial year. In accordance with the Local Government Act, Council is required to prepare an annual report, which contains a report on the operations of Council and an audit performance statement and audited financial statements. The financial statements and performance statement, including the annual report, were approved in principle at the ordinary Council meeting in September. Some of the highlights in the annual report include the election of our current councillors in October last year. We also received a national award for our digital transformation with Towong Shire and Indigo Shire Council. We continue to have another strong year with our capital works delivery, with highlights being the progression of the Great Valley Trail between Bright and Harriettville, and some important bridge upgrades in the Kiwa Valley as well. Other highlights included Council's participation in the Victorian Energy Collaboration, known as VECO, which allows for 100% of all of Council's electricity requirements to be met with or by or from renewable sources. So really fantastic outcome there from a greenhouse gas reduction, but it also led to a saving about 20% based on our typical electricity consumption. Of course, our people in our organisation did an extraordinary job opening and closing and putting restrictions in place in accordance with COVID and all the challenges that brought. We had a planning scheme amendment for the Mount Beauty Aerodrome and Air Park. And from a financial perspective, our surplus was $4.7 million, which was 2.5 higher than forecast. And whilst that might seem that we are in a extraordinarily strong financial position, in reality, $3.5 million of that came from additional grant funding, which wasn't forecast, and $1 million of that came from completed subdivision. And that's non-cash, but it comes through our profit and loss, through our income statement. So seen as contributes to our surplus, even though it's actually not a financial thing. And of those financial, the grants we received, we're committed to deliver projects for that. So it's already committed cash. Also worth noting that the financial impact of COVID on council's financial position was minimal, and staff were stood down or were redeployed as we were required to close services. And another point is the employee costs were higher than forecast, which was largely due to the Working Victoria funding we received from the Victorian government, which led to about 30 additional staff for a 6-month period. So great program where we were able to employ a number of people and deliver more outcomes for our community. And it is recommended that council adopt the annual report, adopt the recommendation as read.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholas. Seconder. Councillor Keeble. Councillor Nicholas, any comment?
Just as usual, it's a comprehensive and thorough annual report. We've been briefed on all of those things all the way through the year, so we've seen them happening. And that was a great summary, by the way, Mr. Bird. And that shows what a great transparent organisation we have. There's no surprises. We're ready to steam through into the future. This report is telling us, and that's great. Well done.
Councillor Keeble, any comment?
Yeah, I would say that that was a great summary by the CEO of what's happened in the last 12 months in the finances in particular. And yes, there is 4.7 million in surplus, but that is a lot of that's made up of some other funds and other reasons. And I know people out there might say, well, the Shire's got a lot of money. Those cost a lot of money to fix roads and pipes and a few other things. And you know, I take my hat off to our financial area in the Shire for all the work they do, because there's a lot of movements in and out. So yeah, well done.
Thank you. Would any other councillor like to make a comment at this point? No, I'll just add my words of congratulations to the staff and the officers on producing something, and also my congratulations to the council on deciding on all these things and having them passed without problems. I'll put this to the vote, that recommendation be accepted. Those in favour? Thank you, that's been carried. Item 8.2, Director of Assets, Mr. Will Jeremy, Access and Inclusion Plan. Thank you, Mr. Jeremy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report relates to the proposed adoption of the draft Access and Inclusion Plan. Councils are required under Section 38 of the Victorian Disability Act of 2006 to prepare a Disability Action Plan, which is also known as an Access and Inclusion Plan. This plan identifies actions to remove barriers and to increase inclusion for and change attitudes and practices which discriminate against people with a disability. Council's current Disability Action Plan was adopted in 2011. It was revised in 2014 and it's now recognised to contain out-of-date content. The current draft Access and Inclusion Plan has been developed in consultation with key internal and external stakeholders, alongside the development of the new council plan and the Municipal Public Health and Wellbeing Plan. And it recommends that access and inclusion is considered in all parts of council's work. Council endorsed the draft Access and Inclusion Plan to be placed on public exhibition at the August 2021 council meeting. It was placed on exhibition for a period of 28 days and we received 8 submissions. Submissions are summarised as 4 submissions relating to the upgrading of facilities, 2 related to the availability of accessible housing, and 2 related to the measurement of outcomes. These submissions will be addressed through the actions which are captured in the Access and Inclusion Action Plan. It should also be noticed, however, that Council can play an advocacy role with the relevant agencies in the provision of accessible housing and transport, but it's not directly responsible for the provision of either of these services. So the recommendation today is that Council, number 1, adopts the Access and Inclusion Plan. Number 2, develops an action plan addressing the focus areas, objectives and opportunities identified in the plan. And number 3, prioritises projects and programs listed in the action plan, identifying resources and the budget required to deliver each of these actions.
Thank you. Could I have a mover, please? Councillor Hughes, seconder. Councillor Janus. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's really good to be seeing an increase in submissions on these documents that are going out through council. I think it's really important because there are different people throughout our community that certain documents apply to more so than others. I know that I've had a few discussions on this plan with some people around the community. And just to make note too that the action plan is there. That doesn't mean that it's you can't inquire for other things to change, because things change all the time. So please be mindful of that, you know, contact council if there's a query, and you would be surprised what is already happening or about to happen as well. So keep the communications happening throughout the process, not just for the document to go out as well. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Hughes. Councillor Janus.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor, and thanks, Councillor Hughes. This plan also relates to planning for tourism in our area. We have our tourism numbers hopefully will increase again, and I'm sure they will. And we have to ensure that we cater for people with disabilities who might have come from other areas where they were catered for, and we have to show that that's also happening here. And I'm hoping that this plan does that, not only with areas around our town, but in our sports and recreational areas too, that people might use. And it's something I brought up recently with another plan that's going to go out for discussion. And we need to be cognizant of people with those disabilities. And I understand the front door of our Shire office is to be imminently replaced after a couple of years, I know from previous conversation. So there's a good start for us on a practical basis.
Thank you, Councillor Janus. Would any other councillor like to make comment on this, the Access and Inclusion Plan? Councillor Keeble.
Thanks, Mayor Forsyth. I think most of us would know people with mobility issues and the like. I know my grandmother, she, contracted polio when she was about 10, and I never actually ever saw her walk. And I remember, having to help her in and out of around buildings and, newsagents and all the shops that people go into. So in regards to, the Shire having these inclusion and access plans, they're really important to many people. So I commend them for putting this through.
Thank you. Any others wish to make comment at the moment? No? Councillor Hughes, any final comment? Thank you. I'll put this to the vote. Those in favour? Thank you. That's carried. Now, the next 6 items on the agenda, items 8.2.2, 8.2.3, 8.2.4, 8.2.5, 8.2.6 and 8.2.7 relate to the awarding of contracts to various people for various amounts. I will read through the 6 here. I'm planning to, or I propose to put these through as a single recommendation. If councillors are happy with that, please nod your heads or thank you. Right. The 6 items are the Toowoomba Caravan Park, sewage rising main and sewage pump station, the Mount Beauty Airport upgrade construction, asphalt overlay contract for 21-22, the resealing contract for 21-22, Great Valley Trail asphalt contract, and the dinner plane construction of a bus bay, bus shelter and car parking bays. If any councillor would like to make comments or questions or have questions on this, that will be the case. Could I have a mover, please, for these 6 items? Councillor Keeble, thank you. Seconder, Councillor Prime. Right, Councillor Keeble, do you have any questions at all on any of these items?
I don't have any questions, Mayor Forsyth, but other than to say, and there's a lot of work behind these contracts. Well done to the staff. I know people in the Kiwa Valley and the Shire in general will be very excited about the Toowoomba Caravan Park finally getting, redeveloped there, and the Mount Beauty Airfield, which will be very strategic. So, things are moving along. So well done. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Councillor Prime, you have any comment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just along the similar lines as Councillor Keeble there, lots of people have been watching this Toowoomba Caravan Park space. So although it may not be the most glamorous section of the job, being the sewage related items, it's definitely a nice start, and I think people will appreciate that there's things starting to happen there. I do know everyone's paying attention to it. So it's great to see there. And again, lots of work has gone into all of this.
Yes, I'd like to think we're a council of action. That's good. Any other comments from any of the councillors on it? Yes, Councillor Nicholas.
I'd like to make a comment on the resealing contract.
Certainly.
Only in the assessment of it, because it's not in our report now, but when we were advised of the tender and its assessment, we were advised that there was an option to have a higher level of recycled material in the reseal material at a prohibitively higher cost. But what I wanted to draw attention to, for anybody who might be listening or might listen later, is that we're starting to move in that direction. When we're starting to ask for and will find ways to improve or decrease our footprint on the planet. And that's great. It's great that it's starting to come from the contractors. So next time, hopefully we'll be able to afford it.
Thank you. Any other comments? No? Okay. I'm going to put those 6 items to the vote. Those in favour? Thank you. And no one against? That is carried. Item 8.2.8. Alpine Better Places, Harrietville and Toowoomba. Thank you, Mr. Jeremy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report relates to the Alpine Better Places, Harrietville and Toowoomba project, and it outlines the proposed next steps for endorsement by Council this evening. So the Alpine Better Places, Harrietville and Toowoomba project commenced in March 2020, and the key outcomes we were aiming to achieve through the design brief were improved streetscapes, including wayfinding signage, paths, tracks or trails, to better connect the town's assets and facilities, integrated landscape treatments and improved parking options, and improved open space reserves, including upgraded and or additional facilities and amenities. So we've been through quite an extensive engagement process with the community on both of these parts of the project, so both the Harrietville and the Toowoomba part, which has included to date 3 separate rounds of engagement with the public. So we've engaged the public, we've developed a plan, we've engaged again, developed another plan, and we've done it a 3rd time. So it's been quite an extensive process. Even, might I say, a little bit more so than when we delivered the Paul Punker and the Bright plans. We only had 2 formal rounds of engagement there. So we really have tried our best to really capture what the community is looking for. So we're at a critical point now where we need to decide, or council needs to decide, how to move forward. And there's a couple of considerations. I'll start with Toowoomba. So during the 3rd round of consultation, council became aware that the Toowoomba Scout Hall may become available for purchase. This Scout Hall is currently owned by the Scouts Association of Australia. And whether council chooses or chooses not to, or is successful purchasing the Scout Hall, will have an impact on the plans for the Alpine Better Places in Toowoomba. So we engage with the community. We've got some feedback from the community, and we're working through that feedback now with council. What we're recommending this evening is that the Alpine Better Places Toowoomba scope is placed on hold until a decision is reached on the purchase or otherwise of the Toowoomba Scout Hall. Once there's a decision reached, then we'll re-establish the work. And depending on whether or not the Scout Hall or the land that the Scout Hall sits on is part of that scope, will determine what the outcome of that project looks like. So that's Toowoomba. Harrietville, we're at a position now where we're ready with a draft concept plan, and we're ready to go out for community consultation, essentially on the draft plan. So what we're proposing is a public exhibition process, really to wrap up the community engagement process on this part of the project, and to essentially establish whether in the community's eyes and council's eyes, we've got the feedback right and we've delivered plans that represent what the community is looking for. So that's the proposal this evening, that we essentially place the plans for Harriettville on public engagement. The other point of note for Harriettville is there are 4 different components to the project, and as part of the public exhibition, we've got a recommended staging for the delivery of this project, and we would also like to test through the public exhibition that is supported by council and community. So the feedback we've had to date, the staging for these discrete elements of the project is firstly the Trono Dredge Hole car park area has come back as the #1 priority for the community, followed by Pioneer Park and Tavaray Park. In third place, the area around the Harriettville Community Hall, and then finally a minor project component, which is to connect the Feathertop track footpath back down to the Dredge Hole area. So that's the proposed staging of the projects. This is all subject to securing funding into the future, but certainly that's the feedback we've had from the community. So the recommendation tonight is as noted in the council report.
Thank you, Mr. Jeremy. For just one clarification in item 5 or recommendation 5, do you have any timeline as to when you may be able to reinvigorate the Alpine Better Places Toowoomba concept designs?
So there's 2 potential options. One is that council is successful purchasing the Toowoomba Scout Hall land, in which case the timing will then be dependent on the time frame to get a contract of sale in place and get that locked in. So that typically it could be a number of months before we're able to move forward. The other option is that council isn't successful or chooses not to purchase that land, in which case we'll be in a position to move much more quickly, because that'll essentially close that option and remove it off the table.
Thank you. Could I have a mover and a seconder for this recommendation? Councillor Nicholas, seconder, Councillor Prime. Councillor Nicholas.
As Mr. Jeremy has outlined, there's been a lot of work behind this, working with our communities to go forward, and the plans look fantastic. I certainly sat in on some of the remote consultation sessions, and the input was constructive and taken on board, and I'm really looking forward to seeing some of them roll out when we can get them funded. And congratulations to the community who put in, as well as the staff and consultants. Great projects.
Thank you. Councillor Prime.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a long process, but it's been really thorough. And I think people, particularly knowing Toowoomba quite well, and I know a lot of people from Toowoomba have reached out to me during this, or spoken to Councillor Keeble as well about what they want done with the area. And it's really good to see a lot of passion behind it. And everyone just wants the final outcome to be really good. I think that's a really good move with the Scout Hall, regardless of what happens there with the purchase. Things just need to be put on hold until that gets finalised, and I think everyone will appreciate that. And we'll see what happens on the other side of this.
Thank you. Any other councillors like to make comments on this? Councillor Hughes.
Yeah, I just wanted to make comment. Obviously, throughout this process, there's been lots of discussions and back and forth, and hard work had by many, and many good suggestions. And it really does show the community spirit in these smaller towns. And I think that's something that really needs to be embraced and nurtured. So I applaud the process to date, and I really look forward to seeing the final products.
Thank you. Any further comments? Councillor Keeble.
I will say that this has been a good journey. 14 years ago, when I got onto council, there wasn't the funds to do these sort of better places projects. There just wasn't. And when people pay their rates, when ratepayers pay their rates, they want to see things, that really help the areas that they live in. And our towns, whether it's larger towns or smaller towns, deserve that sort of those upgrades to make them more livable. And with some hard work and some hard decisions, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years ago, whatever it was, we're able to do Mount Beauty, Bright, Myrtleford, and Paulpunker. And you look at those spaces now, and there's been some terrific changes to those landscapes. And then we said, right, what about our next tier level of towns? And that was maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And that's Harriettville and Toowoomba and others. And now we're getting to the space where we can afford to do this stuff. It's just terrific, I think. So it does take a little bit of time, and I'm you know, I think everyone should be happy and proud that we're able to do some of these things for our small towns and the rest of the Shire. Well done.
Good. Any other comments? Yes, Councillor Janus.
Good, thank you. Fingers working now. Actually, Councillor Kiwa, I think you remember had a planning day in the Rose White Hall, in actual fact, when we discussed strategic planning going forward with a previous CEO and how we were going to put more resource into our smaller communities once we'd got through Bright, Myrtleford, Porepunkah thing. And this is what council needs to do. It needs to think not just for this immediate time, but into the future, because a project from start to go, you know, typically 4 or 5 years before time planning and then delivery of that. So council is going forward, you know, and we need to think of now other things. Once we get this done, we always need to have forward work and planning going forward. So I think we're on a good path here, and I'm hoping we're really looking forward, even if in this council term, that we can, you know, attend some nice openings and enjoy it with those communities, that work that's been done. And it's excellent work by our staff going forward.
Thank you, Councillor Janus. No other hands up. Councillor Nicholas, any final word? No, thank you.
Thank you.
I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour of the recommendation? Thank you, that's carried. 8.2.9, funding applications. Thank you, Mr. Jeremy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report relates to available funding opportunities to which council is eligible to apply, and it seeks council's endorsement for funding applications to be submitted to facilitate the delivery of new and upgraded facilities. So the objective of this grant opportunity is to support the recovery of communities in eligible local government areas which have been affected by the 2019-20 bushfires, and it enables them to apply for projects that address community recovery needs.
Mr. Mayor, can I make an amendment to the recommendation, please?
Certainly, Councillor Janus, your amendment.
8.2.9. I'd like to include 1.C in that, to add the Myrtleford Splash Park construction of up to 2.2 million.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
So this is an amended motion. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Vincent. Right, can I ask the Director, Mr. Jeremy, to continue with the background on this one and note that we now have 1.C as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the Australian government, through the Black Summer Bushfire Fund, will directly fund successful applicants to conduct a range of projects which are designed to support the social and economic recovery and restoration of the built environments in those communities that were affected by the bushfires. The communities in both Harriettville and Myrtleford were impacted by the 2019-20 bushfires, and residents were subject to multiple evacuation orders from those towns over the period of this emergency. The two projects which we've nominated for funding applications have been identified by those communities as high priorities, and delivery of both of these projects will significantly contribute to their social and economic recovery. So just to note, before the amendment that Councillor Janus requested, we have the Alpine Places Harriettville. So that's the Toronto Dredge Hull car park, and that's for a sum of 1.1 million. And that relates back to the report which we've just I've just presented to you. And then secondly, we had the Myrtleford Savoy Soccer Club upgrade for a sum of $2.0 million. So that's under the Australian government's Black Summer Bushfire Recovery Fund. The other opportunity we have, which we've captured under this report, is also potential for an opportunity to apply for funding to do some planning for renewal of the Mountain View Children's Centre in Myrtleford. So this childcare centre has been identified as a high priority in Council's project pipeline, and this is supported by feedback from users of the facility and by the operator, Alpine Children's Services. So the funding is under the Building Blocks Grant Programme, and that would allow us to secure funding to do some design work to facilitate a future funding application for the upgrade of that facility. So those are the, that's recommendation 2 in the report, is that Council endorses an application to the Building Blocks Fund for the Mountain View Children's Centre upgrade concept design for a sum of $150,000. All 3 funds that I've recommended there have no co-contribution required from Council.
Thank you. So just for clarification, Mr. Jeremy, the item 1 of your recommendation now has 1A, which is Alpine Better Places to Toronto Dredge Hole Caravan Park for 1.1 million. B will be the Myrtleford Savoy Soccer Club upgrade for a total of 2 million. And C, the Myrtleford Splash Park for a total of 2.2 million. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's how I did it now, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Okay, so that's the recommendation before Council. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Mover, Councillor Hughes. Seconder, Councillor Janus. Thank you, Councillor Hughes.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. These applications for grant funding are really important for our council to be able to apply for, and some serious hard work goes in behind them to get these. I want to make it very aware to everybody that these types of applications allow the upgrades of facilities that you use often, and you would be surprised what wouldn't happen if the hard work didn't go in behind this. So I really want to applaud those involved in the ones that we've been successful for to date, and the ones that we know that we'll be applying for in the future, including the ones put up today, as they really do form what our Shire shows everybody, that we can upgrade these facilities and give everyone what they need. So well done to everyone involved.
Thanks, Councillor Hughes. Councillor Janus.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. This is sort of reiterating a little bit what I said previously about our strategic thinking going forward, and identifying areas that will need future funding after consultation with our ratepayers. And I note in particular the Mountain View Children's Centre upgrade. I know that a number of young parents have spoken to me about that facility, and it's very pleasing to see that we are now taking that project perhaps to a next stage. And as I say, you know, between 4 and 5 years for something for an end result. But these applications will be submitted to the federal government and will be assessed by them. So let's hope we could get all of them, but I don't hold my hopes up too high to get all of them, but we do have a good track record in delivering projects, and that goes well for us. So we might get most of them, we hope.
Any other councillors like to make comment on this? Councillor Keeble.
Mayor Forsyth, thank you. I noticed that the Alpine Better Places for Harrietville had the dredge hole. They've had some, feedback about which projects to put forward, and just for the people that are listening, that the dredge hole car park was the one that had the most interest, I guess. That's what I'm guessing from the feedback. It's certainly not to say the other 3 projects at Harrietville aren't important, and hopefully in future funding rounds they may be successful. We may be successful in getting some fundings for those particular projects.
Thank you, Councillor Keeble. Question for the Director of Assets, and that is, we've got 3, we're endorsing 3 applications here for funding. If unsuccessful, in your vast experience, how long before other funding rounds will become available?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're aware of an upcoming funding round through the federal government's local roads and community infrastructure fund. So we're awaiting for the details of the grant criteria, but we're expecting to be able to start delivering projects from that fund early in the new calendar year. The amount of that funding we've been advised is around the $1.4 million. So that would be the next available funding that we're likely to see. Beyond that, we don't know.
Thank you. That clarifies. Any other councillors like to make comment? No, back to Councillor Hughes. Any final comment? No, thank you. I shall put this to the vote, bearing in mind that we now have 1 point C in there, which is the Myrtleford Splash Park. All those in favour? Thank you. That's carried. 8.2.10. Bushfire Council Support Fund allocation. Again, Mr. Jeremy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this report relates to the allocation of funding under a second deed of variation to the Council Support Fund, which was provided by the state government and administered by Bushfire Recovery Victoria. So in January 2020, immediately following the bushfires, Council received $1 million from the state government's Council Support Fund, and this was to support community recovery from the bushfires. We received a further $500,000 in January 2021, which had the same purpose, which was to continue to support recovery. And we've been advised in July this year of a second deed of variation, which applies an additional $800,000 to that fund. So the purpose of this report today is to recommend the allocation of that $800,000 of funding across some various categories that we've identified in the report, which align with the grant funding criteria that we've been provided by the state government. So the recommendation today is as presented, that Council endorses the allocation that we've proposed.
Thank you. Mover and seconder. Councillor Hughes, Councillor Nicholas. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Where I think the bushfire recovery funds are massively important for our region. We were hit by bushfires and then continued through COVID, so it feels like it hasn't really stopped. And recovery isn't an instant thing, it's ongoing and forever evolving, and more things come up all the time. So these type of funding opportunities where we can allocate to projects and programs and things going through the system, I think it's really important, and we're lucky in that sense that we can access this type of support moving through. So I know that we've had many successful things happen through bushfire recovery funding to date, and I look forward to seeing what can come out of it from this point forward.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Councillor Nicholas, any comment?
Nothing to add. No.
Thank you. Any other councillors comment? No. To the vote, please. Those in favour of recommendation. Thank you. That's carried. Right. 8.3, Director of Corporate Performance, Ms. Helen Havercroft. Now, I understand 8.3.1. Ms. Havercroft, are you presenting this, or is the CEO presenting this? Or is Mr. Jeremy presenting?
I'll present it, Mr. Mayor, the CEO.
Thank you. We are being very kind on Ms. Havercroft in her second day in the office. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bird.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm a bit more familiar with this project than what Helen has been, given it's less than 48 hours since she started in the job. So this report relates to the adoption of the Community Vision Council Plan, which incorporates a municipal public health and wellbeing plan and financial plan. So ordinarily, after a council election by 30th of June next year, council is required to adopt a 4-year council plan. This time, there's a new Local Government Act 2020, and in accordance with that, we are required to have a community vision, which has to have at least a 10-year time frame, a 4-year council plan, and a 10-year financial plan adopted within 12 months of the council being elected. So we were given an extra few months to prepare our council plan this time round, and there's a few additional requirements, one of which is the requirement for deliberative engagement, which I'll talk to shortly. So these are really important strategic documents. So the community vision we have here is a community vision for 24, which is an aspiration for our Shire. The 4-year council plan is a strategic document that guides council for the next 4 years and the remainder of councillors for their term, which is just over 3 years. And importantly, the financial plan, which identifies and articulates the resources required to work towards the aspiration of the 2040 vision and ensures we can deliver upon the council plan. So there's been really significant community engagement in the development of these key strategic documents. So I recall back in November last year, we commenced engagement with our new councillors, our councillors who are on screen today, around the development of our council plan. Following on from that, in about April this year, we undertook broad engagement with our community surveys, a number of listening posts at key townships over that period. And I think we had in the order of 368 community members participate in that, which was fantastic. And through that, we identified a number of themes, which then we use as a basis for the community panel, which is a selection of, or a group of 46 people, which is from people across the Shire, which considers the demographic of age, gender, location, and home ownership. And we sought expression of interest for that, and an independent consultant selected that panel. And a really important panel, which we use to inform the development of the vision and our council plan, and also provide feedback on the financial plan. And this panel will be in place until the 30th of June 2023. So they'll inform a number of key matters for our Shire. So they informed looked at the themes, and then they formed the vision, which is the broad range, and then from that, the strategic drivers for the council plan. Now, within the council plan, for each of those strategic drivers, there's a number of strategic objectives and then strategies about how those strategic objectives will be achieved. And we're also required under the Act to have indicators which provide an indication of how we're performing or progressing towards the achievement of those strategic objectives. So really good piece of work and great engagement from our community. And a number of months ago, I think it was September, council adopted the August council meeting, council adopted the draft council plan, vision and financial plan. We put it out for 28 days to the community, and we received 10 submissions during that time and had some really strong engagement presented to a number of community groups. And for 10 submissions, some of those submitters asked to be heard and presented to council a few weeks ago. And council has considered that feedback and made some changes to the plans. And probably just to summarise, so there was a number of changes to the wording and some corrections made there as well. But there was a really strong message that the community wanted to have targets for the indicators. And so what we have in the final council plan that you'll see here, targets for a number of our strategic indicators where it made sense. There's not one for every single strategic objective, but it is where it's clear and it makes sense for that strategic indicator. So look, it's been a really satisfying project to be part of. You know, really important documents, the vision, the council plan, and the financial plan, and how each of those the changes have been made to the plans is summarised in the report itself, and I won't run through those. I'm just going to step to the recommendations where, in summary, council notes the 10 submissions that were received, and in there's what amendments have been made. And number 2, the council adopts the community vision, council plan, and financial plan. And finally, the council acknowledges and thanks the submitters and the community panel for their valuable input into the development of these plans.
Thank you, Mr. Bird. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Nicholas, Councillor Vincent. Councillor Nicholas.
Yep, Mr. Bird has again given us a fabulous summary of some incredible input from a wide range of people. But I wanted to pick out the deliberative engagement because it is a first step for Alpine Shire in the whole. They did run a citizens jury many years ago for an environment plan, which was funded by somebody else. Anyway, so learning how to do some engagement that's that intense, I think, is a really good step forward. And the people who could participate on that deliberative panel put in a lot to give us their thinking and their ideas, and that's fantastic, and it shows in what we've got in front of us and what we've got to work with over the next few years. So I commend it.
Thank you. Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As a first-time councillor, it's been a fantastic process and a long process, as well as the CEO has outlined. And I want to pick up on the point 3, the recommendation about thanking and acknowledging the community panel and the community members, because it, again, as a new person to this, it does feel like this is a document that has emerged out of authentic feedback coming from our community of various types of feedback, and really storyboarding the whole thing. And it's been, in a good way, like a messy process of putting everything out there and working over many, many months and bringing it together in a very cohesive document, which I congratulate the council officers who've worked on this tirelessly and come up with it, what I think is a fabulous plan. And I actually love that the new, the 2020 Local Government Act requires us to have a vision and a 10-year financial plan, because I personally think that's a really fantastic way for councils to operate and have that link into a council plan. So we're not just looking at one term of council at a time. And so well done, everyone involved. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Vincent. Any other comments from councillors? Councillor Prime.
Yeah, just a quick shout out to those people who made submissions. Some of them were extremely thorough, well thought out, a lot of effort put into that, like very, very impressive, because they're not small documents to go over. There's lots of words in there to read over. So really the fact that people take the time and effort to really go over it thoroughly is really appreciated. And just people reaching out directly as well as making the submissions. So really appreciated. So I hope we've really encompassed what everyone's put into it.
Would you like to add to that, Councillor Hughes?
Yeah, thank you. The deliberative engagement process, I think, is a massive value add. It's a broad variety of different demographics throughout our entire Alpine Shire. So it's not that minority group that, tends to speak loudly. So I think it's a really fantastic process where all these things are taken into consideration and the questions being asked and thought about. So for me as a first-time councillor, we I think it was week 2, we was like, bang, all right, this is what we're doing. So the process has been involved, exciting, tiresome, all of the above, but the discussions that I've had and the people that I've met throughout the process within our community that I might not have normally spoken to, I think that's the whole reason of these things, is that we're coming together collectively to put a plan together, because you know what, we all live here, we all love this place, and there's reasons why we love it. So we want to put that future planning forward. So thank you to everybody, staff and as well, who I have to say kept us on point, because we weren't part of that deliberative engagement process. There were questions that we went, oh, why don't we change this? And they made a very big point of saying no. It was very strong that point needed to be exactly as stated. So I commend everybody involved throughout the whole process.
Thank you. Any other councillors wish to comment at all? Yes, Councillor Keeble.
Thanks, Mayor Forsyth. A big thank you to everyone who was involved in the deliberative groups. And, when we do talk to people who are part of it, some will say, oh, I didn't know anything about it. Well, there'll always be people that say they didn't know anything about the process. But there were certainly more people in our Shire involved in the process this time than in the last, couple of council plans. And I will say the importance of the council plan for us as councillors is that it's our, we okay the plan or not okay the plan, but it's our plan, and we keep, the CEO accountable and ourselves to that plan, where we have every quarter we look at it and we see what we've done, and that's a good reminder for us to make sure that we keep on track with what our community wants. So yeah, well done, everyone.
Thank you, Councillor Keeble. Councillor Janice.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, I won't continue on. I just want to concur with my fellow councillors. I do want to point out something that Councillor Vincent brought up about the 10-year financial plan. It is something that we have previously had in our council, probably for the last, 1.5, 5 years or so. And we saw that as an important tool even at that time. So when the Local Government Act came out and we, were told we had to have these things, we thought, well, that's no real big problem to us. We've already got that. And that's why we can keep our finances on track and know where we're at and what we can and cannot spend going forward. So, but once again, I concur with my fellow councillors and thank you to those community members who participated, to our staff and to our consultants who also did a good job in that engagement and keeping we councillors informed. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, this has been a very, very important piece of work. I'll put this to the vote. Those in favour of this, please. Thank you. That's been carried. (8.3.2), we have some pieces of business here, internal stuff. So I will now introduce Director of Corporate Performance, Ms. Helen Havercroft. 8.3.2, Instruments of Delegation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The instruments of delegation are an important way for Council to ensure that officers hold the appropriate legislative powers required for the various acts and regulations that Council administers. This report updates Council's instruments of delegation to the Chief Executive Officer and to staff to ensure that they're reviewed within 12 months of the general election, as required by the Local Government Act 2020. Council has already reviewed the CEO delegations in July 2021, which means the requirements of section 11.7. But it provides this report to ensure that staff delegations are also updated by the required timeframes. I recommend that Council adopt the recommendations as written.
Thank you. Could I have a mover, please? Councillor Janus, seconder. Councillor Keeble. Councillor Janus.
Look, these are administrative matters. I'd point out that the purchase of the CEO's financial delegation remains at 150,000, including GST, and that's why some of these reports do come to Council from time to time with contracts, and the others are, and I think they're administrative type things, so no need to comment too long.
Thank you, Councillor Janus. Councillor Keeble, anything to add?
No, I just concur with Councillor Janus.
Right. Can other councillors, any specific comments? No, thank you. Let's put that to the vote then, please. Those in favour? Thank you. That's carried. 8.3.3. Again, Ms. Havercroft, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Instruments of appointment and authorisation are an important means of Council ensuring that its officers are appropriately authorised on the relevant acts that Council administers. This report provides for a change in title for an officer with planning responsibilities. Following the permanent appointment of the Director of Corporate Performance, me, the authorisation for the Acting Director of Corporate Performance can be revoked. I recommend that Council adopt the recommendations as written.
Certainly. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Nicholas and Councillor Keeble. Councillor Nicholas.
Welcome aboard, Helen.
Thank you. Councillor Keeble.
Yes, welcome aboard, Helen. And thanks to Director of Assets, Will Jeremy, for stepping in and doing such a marvellous job as well. And thank you.
Good. Any other comments by councillors? No, I shall put this to the vote then. Those in favour? Thank you. Item 8.3.3 is carried. 8.3.4, the Audit and Risk Committee meeting minutes and recommendations. Again, thank you, Ms. Havercroft.
The purpose of the report is to present the minutes of the Audit and Risk Committee meetings held on the 30th of July 2021 and the 7th of September 21. Key items presented to and considered by the Audit and Risk Committee. included the 2020-21 annual self-assessment of performance, closing report by the external auditors on the audit, 2021 annual financial and performance statements. The committee also extended a welcome to new independent member, Julie Guest, appointed to the committee by the council in July 2021. The recommendations of the council receives the notes and the minutes of the Audit and Risk Committee held on the 30th of July and the 7th of September.
Thank you. Could I have a mover? Councillor Vincent, Councillor Nicholas, Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Havercroft. As you've outlined in the summary, we welcome Julie, who I think is a fantastic addition to the committee. She's got a huge lineup of experience in the area of audit and risk, and so welcome to her. We're so grateful for that contribution, and still classing myself as a new member, I think it's a fabulous committee that is just so vital to the operations and keeping the operations in check. But yeah, nothing really further to report from my side. Thank you.
Councillor Nicholas.
Yeah, I agree with everything Councillor Vincent said. The closing report from the auditor was good too. We don't have lots outstanding, so the committee's been working, well, the committee's been directing the officers to work hard to achieve that. And recently the Valuer, the Auditor General's office passed all the papers and stuff, plus the annual reports ready to proceed, which is terrific. And just reiterate what a fabulous experience it is being on an audit committee with the calibre of the people we've got on that committee and the colour of the people. We just learn every day, every meeting. It's terrific. And they do a wonderful job at keeping the Alpine Shire on track.
Thank you. Are there any councillors that have an objection to this recommendation going forward? No, in that case, I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? Thank you. That's carried. Item 8.3.5, I believe Councillor Keeble has foreshadowed or forewarned us of a conflict of interest. Could I ask the CEO please to put Councillor Keeble in the waiting room at 6:08. Thank you. 8.3.5, the permit and registration fee relief for Alpine Shire businesses. I believe that the ex-acting Director of Corporate Performance, Mr. Will Jeremy, will actually present this one.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this report relates to fee relief for Alpine Shire businesses in 2021 and 22. Council adopts fees for a range of regulatory functions each year as part of the annual budgeting process. This includes registration fees for food premises, caravan parks, health and beauty businesses, as well as footpath advertising, trading and dining permits. The fees are generally set by legislation or are benchmarked against other councils. The impacts of the fires and the ongoing restrictions of COVID-19 have been significant for businesses of the Alpine Shire, and particularly those which are related to tourism and retail. In the last 2 years, Council have received state government funding that it's used to waive the fees for those 2 financial years, and we have the opportunity this year to do the same. So I'll refer councillors back to the report that we presented earlier, which was on the allocation of funding, the $800,000 allocation of bushfire funding. So that grant funding provides the opportunity, and you will have seen that listed in the table, the opportunity to offset these fees, which we're proposing here. I've put in the report the estimated value and the breakdown of those fees. So it's $132,000 is estimated for the current financial year. Anyone who's already paid their fees will be encouraged to apply to have a reimbursement from the 1st of July this year. It's worth noting the value to a business from the fee waiver that's on the table today is up around, or could be up around the $600 mark. So for example, a business that has a hospitality business with on-street trading could be looking at saving $628 from the fee waiving. So it's significant for our small businesses. So the recommendation to council today is that is as noted on the table, essentially that council applies the same fee waivers for those fees as we did in the last 2 financial years.
Thank you. Could I have a Councillor Janis, seconder, Councillor Vincent. Thank you. Councillor Janis.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, this is an obvious way to go. If we can help out businesses in this very difficult time that they're having, $600. That's a lot of pies. That's a lot of, chips or whatever. And having been in small business myself in an earlier life, it is difficult when you have difficult times. And I know that there are some people who are really struggling to keep the doors open, who want to look after their staff. So anything we can do at this point in time, whilst we have those funds available to us, then I think we almost morally should pass that on to those that are that need that assistance and qualify for that assistance to that for those amounts. So it's I think 132,000 fully funded from the state government's local council outdoor eating and entertainment package, which we also should acknowledge the state government for that contribution to our businesses.
Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I concur with Councillor Janice and think that, yeah, absolutely thank you to the government for availing us of these funds, and because it wouldn't be, and my understanding is it just wouldn't most likely be a possibility to provide this relief if we didn't have that. And so it's a fabulous outcome for our struggling businesses who've been through so much, and yeah, hopefully welcomed by many local business owners. Thank you.
The other councillors like to make comment? Thank you. Councillor Hughes.
Yes, thank you. Same as Councillor Vincent and Councillor Janice, every dollar counts at the moment with a lot of our businesses. So anything to be able to aid in that. However, Mr. Jeremy, I do have a question. You said that any fees that have been paid to date, they will have to apply to get that money back. Is that something that they will be notified of to then put in application to make sure that they're aware of what we moved tonight?
That's correct, Councillor Hughes. So we'll contact each of them and we'll try and facilitate the process to the best of our ability for people who want to apply.
Thank you.
Nice clarification, Councillor Hughes. Any other councillors? Look, let's put this to the vote then. Those in favour of the recommendation? Thank you. That's carried. Mr. Bird, would you like to allow Councillor Keeble back in, please? Councillor Keeble rejoined the meeting at 6:13. Thank you. Now, the next three items are planning application items. And I understand that Mr. Jeremy will also be presenting these because he is very familiar with them. Thank you. 8.3.6, planning application, 15 O'Donnell Avenue, Myrtleford.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as you noted, this planning application relates to 15 O'Donnell Avenue in Myrtleford. The proposal involves two components. So the first being a 3-lot subdivision with common property, and the second being building and works for the construction of 3 dwellings. The smallest lot size is 219 square metres and the largest lot has an area of 367 square metres. Common property has an area of 308 square metres. The site has a total area of approximately 1,109 square metres. So this application was notified in accordance with Section 52 of the Planning and Environment Act. We posted notice of the application on the site, and we also sent a notice to the surrounding landholders as we're required to. We received 3 objections to this planning permit, and those objections were maintained through to this point. So I've summarised in the report for you the matters of the objections. So those were a range of matters, including setback was too close to Kneebone Court, which is at the back of the development. It'll negatively impact on land and house value, negatively changing the character of the area, overdevelopment of the site, lack of appropriate landscaping, no on-site visitor car parking, and inappropriate street setback and additional noise impacts and overlooking. So there's a range of objections there. The applicant responded to each of those, and that's included in the council report, and our assessing officer responded, again, his assessment of the response from the applicant. So all of that you'll find in the council report there. Council officers have assessed this application against all the applicable policy and decision guidelines, and it is considered to be consistent with the Alpine planning scheme. And therefore, the recommendation this evening is that the application should be approved. And I've summarised the reasons in the recommendation there for that approval.
Thank you, Mr. Jeremy. Could I have a mover for this, please? Councillor Janus, can I have a seconder? Councillor Vincent, thank you. Councillor Janus.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This type of housing and subdivision is becoming more and more prevalent now in our shire, and we do have an identified lack of affordable type housing now. This may go some way to helping with that. I note earlier in some conversation that I've had with one of our esteemed councillors about environmental capacity for our new dwellings, and I'm hoping that our developers will take heed in when they do build these premises. They are small areas, that is for sure. I suppose I do have a little bit of concern in relation to car parking in particular, where it becomes, when we have these types of subdivisions or buildings on, and normally, you know, if there's one car per household, that's fine, but we have got a public park across the road which is heavily utilised, and I wouldn't like to see that it's encouraged that people start parking on their footways and reservations as well, which can become quite prominent when we have this type of development. However, there's nothing before me to say that there's any detriment to any planning regulations. So, and I understand the objectives with overview and overlooking things, but I think that's tried to be addressed by the developer on the northern western wall, 1.8 metres or something wall on top of a side cut. So I can't say much more than that, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Janus. Councillor Vincent.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, look, I found this one a little bit challenging as well. I had some concerns probably around the size of the blocks and sort of having 3 houses on that, and you know, what implications that have now and in the future. And I suppose I wanted to talk out those thoughts because in many ways I've had a lot of conversations and further thinking on that. And I do also think that we have an ageing population that are looking for alternative housing to move into, where they're retired and they don't want their massive house and block anymore, and they are looking for alternatives to stay in the same community. And as we all recognise, there's a shortage of available housing. And so on the counter to my own concerns, I suppose, is that this is addressing that. And I take note of the officer's recommendation that it is in line with the current planning guidelines that we have. So, but I wanted to, I suppose, voice those concerns to the group and the community. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Vincent. Have we got any other councillors like to make comments? No. Okay, then. I do note in recommendation 2 that the proposal provides for urban infill, which is something that we are probably seeing more of, I believe, in the Alpine Shire. And Councillor Janus, the dwellings 1 and dwelling 3 actually have double garages, I believe, not singles. Okay, Can I put that to the vote, please? Those in favour? I can't see hands. Now I can. Yep. Thank you. And those against? Thank you. It is carried. Next item is item 3.7, planning application 490 Buckland Valley Road. Mr. Jeremy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report relates to planning application P2019-1691 for 490 Buckland Valley Road. The proposal is for the use and development of the land for group accommodation, which is development of 3 short-term accommodation cabins. Subject land is located on the western side of the Buckland Valley Road. North and south of the subject land are land holdings currently under grape, apple and nut production. East of the site is currently grazed and west is the Buckland River with the Mount Buffalo National Park beyond that. The site has a total area of just short of 10 hectares and it currently contains a single-storey dwelling and a garage with part of the site used for the growing of olives with a secondary use for horse grazing. Access is afforded to the site via an existing crossover located on the Buckland Valley Road and an all-weather driveway. This application was advertised in accordance with Section 52 of the Planning and Environment Act. Notice of the application was sent to 8 surrounding landholders and occupiers, and a sign was displayed on the subject land. The application was publicly notified for 14 days, and we had 1 objection which was received and it has been maintained. So the concern raised by the objector is that the approval of this planning application will lead to a conflict between the landholders due to the placement of scare guns in relation to the location of the cabins on site. And this will restrict the ability of the adjacent landholder to farm his vineyards. And the basic objection is that it's consistent with the various provisions within the Alpine planning scheme. So Council's planning department recognises this potential conflict and recognises that this is a significant issue that's been raised. However, it is considered that an appropriate approach to addressing this issue could be to issue the owner of the vineyard with a permit, which allows scare guns to be used across the full extent of the property. And coupled with the current Section 173 agreement on the property, which is the subject of this application, we believe that will effectively manage the risk of potential impact to the adjacent landholders. So council officers have assessed this application against the applicable policy and decision guidelines. It is considered to be consistent with the Alpine planning scheme, and therefore the recommendation this evening is that this permit should be approved subject to conditions outlined.
Thank you, Mr. Jeremy. Do I have a mover, please? Councillor Hughes, and a seconder, Councillor Nicholas. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This type of application, I think it allows for holiday accommodation outside of our townships, which we know is a contentious issue around town, knowing that there's a lot of housing that's being taken up from tourists. So this type of thing allows that disbursement out to the more rural areas of our Alpine Shire, which I actually think is an excellent thing for our region. We're unique in the type of agriculture that we have here, and there is a reason why people come to visit. And I think group accommodation services like this around the farming lands and really showcasing where and what we have here in the Alpine Shire is a real value add in my eyes. So the good thing with the applications like this is there are conditions based on them, that there are certain things that have to be met prior to the accommodation actually being put up and utilised. So just to make note that there are those conditions there, and it's not as straightforward as just saying yes. So that's my comment on this one. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hughes. Councillor Nicholas.
Very similar comments to Councillor Hughes in some ways, but I wanted to point out too that the proponents moved their cottages and changed their plans to accommodate the objector. So they've tried really hard to make this work. And I think that to keep our agricultural land in the state that we'd like to see it as agricultural land and not have houses all over it, it's okay to have some of these little places that support a property for eco/agritourism. So not only are they out of town, but it's a different product to most of the other group accommodation that we've got. I just hope that the proponents put in some EV charging in their development. I think that'd be good. But I also I think that disagree with the other stuff that Katerina was saying. Sorry, I lost my train of thought.
Thanks, Councillor Nicholas. Any other comments by councillors on this application? Councillor Keeble.
Thanks, Mayor Forsyth. I think, I can't remember what month it was this year, but we had a similar one in Toowoomba Gap Road of farming land. And although the land was much smaller, definitely wasn't 10 hectares, this particular property, and this one is. And I said at that stage that I think that that particular plan application, it was successful, got through. To me, it's about opening up some of those floodgates of a lot of people watching that. And I still think personally it's not the right use of a farming land, even though that it's in the planning scheme. That's all I'll say, really.
Any other comments by councillors? Councillor Hughes, would you like to comment on Councillor Keeble's comments?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Keeble. I take that on board, what you're saying as well. We don't want to see that loss of agricultural land, but in this applications process, the plan is there to develop it as agricultural land at the same time, so it's not taking away from that. And I think that's really important to hold on to that aspect as well. I think it's very, again, it comes back to why people come to our region and what we have in terms of that agricultural land. So I agree with you. I don't want it to take away from it, but in this case, it's complementing it at the same time. But thank you for your comments.
Thank you. Let's put this to the vote. Those in favour of this recommendation? Thank you. And those against? The motion is carried. Thank you. Item 8.3.8, which is 11 White Star Road, Wandillagong. Mr. Jeremy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the proposal is the use of land as a restaurant, sale and consumption of liquor, and display of business identification signage. Retrospective planning permission is being sought to use the land at 11 White Star Road, Wandillagong, as a restaurant, along with associated signage, and to allow the sale and consumption of liquor in conjunction with the use of the site as a restaurant. The application proposes an overall capacity of 120 patrons, with 70 seated within the proposed restaurant area and 50 externally located seats across the outdoor decking area and within the outdoor rotunda. The application is also proposing the selling of alcohol for consumption on the premises. The operating hours being proposed are Monday to Sunday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m, Good Friday and Anzac Day, 12 p.m. midday to 6 p.m. The signage proposed through the application is currently in situ. One sign is located on the front fence of the subject site next to the driveway, with a further sign located at the corner of White Star Road and Grenville's Road. So the application has been advertised in accordance with Section 52 of the Planning and Environment Act 1987. Notice of this application was sent to the 11 surrounding landholders and occupiers, and a sign was also displayed on the site. 11 objections were received and 17 letters or emails of support were also received. A summary of the objections is as follows. So the first is noise. The amplified noise levels from the subject site is an issue that has been highlighted by many of the objectors and has been a consistent issue since the property opened without planning permission in December 2020. Many of the objectors state that they have approached the operators on several occasions where the noise levels have increased above the EPA noise abatement levels. The increased noise levels have occurred after the proposed closing time of 6 p.m. and into the night. The objectors are concerned that should a permit be issued, this problem will continue. The next point is car parking traffic. Since the consultation meeting between the objectors and the applicant, a revised plan has been submitted which shows the amount of car parking spaces required by the relevant clause in the planning scheme. The original proposed 33 spaces located in the southeast corner of the site are retained, along with an additional 35 spaces on the site of the former maze. The next point of objection was the consequences of liquor consumption. So a number of the objections to the application relate to the consequences of the inappropriate serving of alcohol on the site. Finally, operating without a permit. The current operators have been operating their business without the appropriate planning permits. The operators were made aware on several occasions by Council's planning enforcement officer that they could not operate without the valid planning approvals and the required liquor licence. The operators have ignored Council's orders and have continued operations during the period while they're awaiting a decision on the permit. Council has assessed the planning application in accordance with the relevant planning scheme. And one thing to note is that this restaurant, or the application, is for a site which is located in the farming zone. In the feedback from the planning officers, approval of this application would entrench a non-agricultural use with no demonstrable benefits to agriculture within that farming zone. And it is a requirement of our planning officers that they assess this application in accordance with the relevant provisions of the planning scheme, which is what they've done in this case. So such an application fails to find support in the key clauses of the Alpine planning scheme and within the state and local planning policy framework. It is considered that the approval of a commercial use of this nature with its associated amenity impacts in this location is not reflective of orderly planning. So on this basis, the application is considered to be inconsistent with the Alpine planning scheme, and recommendation tonight is that the planning application should be refused.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to,
Yes.
thank you. Can I please propose an alternate motion?
Certainly, Councillor Vincent. What would the alternate motion be?
Thank you. An alternate motion, let me get the wording, is that council issue a notice of decision to grant a permit with appropriate conditions.
Can I have a seconder for the alternate motion? Councillor Hughes. Okay, let's talk through the alternate motion. Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I absolutely acknowledge the officer's recommendation to refuse a permit due to the land being zoned farming. However, in this particular case, the piece of land in question and its surrounding properties, in my view, have largely been removed from agricultural use now for several decades in character. And therefore, I would propose that the land can be considered of a low density residential nature. And in addition, is the fact that the piece of land has been used for commercial purposes over the past 30 years. And that what is being proposed in this application for this use, in my view, is an acceptable use in this location. I do understand that there are a number of objections and concerns around amenity, car parking, noise and effluent, and my trust in those matters lie in the appropriate conditions that will be attached to this if this granting of a permit is carried. And I'd also note that there has been a number of letters of support and reach out of support in favour of the business. And so probably my final points to make is that what the applicants have developed here on this site, in my view, is an absolute asset to the Alpine Shire locals and the tourist community as well. It's a business that has been designed in a way that is very much aligned with the new COVID requirements of outdoor dining and social distancing. And I do believe that we're going to need and see more of that. And in addition, it's creating local employment opportunities as well by having this venue in that place. And so, you know, in summary, I do believe that a permit should be granted and the appropriate conditions drafted to manage any potential issues aforementioned to allow their business to operate harmoniously with the community. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Vincent. Councillor Hughes.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I concur with Councillor Vincent. You know, I'd like to sing, you took the words right out of my mouth, but I won't. In this instance, you know, this has been ongoing discussions and we've had information from many different parties in relation to this one, and this is not something that has been taken lightly or will be taken lightly, whichever way the vote goes today. I won't, you know, go over the things that Councillor Vincent has already said, but this type of asset in Wandillagong is a massive value add in my eyes, especially with the fact that we've connected up our major town with cycle paths and things like that to create that connectivity. I think that, you know, I grew up in Wandie myself, and pretty sure it was built and developed when I was still in nappies. So for me, it's always been that level of appreciation of having something like that in a small town and accessible. And I know that over the years, it's been developed into a really beautiful and well-kept area. And I think the fact that the alternate motion here is subject to conditions is going to make it very clear that there are things that need to be addressed and really monitored on this one, because there are parties involved that don't agree with what has happened to date. And I feel like these conditions can address those manners. And I think that the parties involved work together to create a good outcome for everybody in this instance. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Hughes. I have other councillors who would like to comment on the alternate motion. Councillor Prime.
I agree. Councillor Vincent articulated that really nicely. I think everyone involved in this needs to be aware this has taken a lot of consideration. This is definitely not something that's been taken on lightly. We've gone over all the details and things like that, and wholeheartedly agree with Councillor Vincent on the reasons that it should be approved.
Thank you. Councillor Nicholas.
I agree too that things that have been said. I just wanted to add that the nature of the business has changed from what it's been for a long time. For the people who live around, there's now a significant change in amenity. Instead of a couple of kids coming at the fence and looking at the chooks, there's now loud adults and there's more adults, and it's, you know, it's busier and noisier is what I'm trying to get at, which is the amenity problem. It's very well used. It is an incredible asset for Wollongong, and it would be a tragedy to not have some sort of operating cafe right where the bike path ends, effectively. So it's a pretty, even though I understand that it has been a difficult road for the people who live nearby the proposed restaurant, and that there's been some awkward times. I agree with what the other councillors said, that people need to get together and move forward on this in some way, shape or form, and that I think that having an alternate motion is a great idea.
Thanks, Councillor Nicholas. Any other councillors wish to comment on the alternate motion? Councillor Janus.
There we go. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I've listened to what the other councillors have said, and in some ways to concur that the matter needs to go forward. This is a new application. The previous facility that was there is no longer there. Nobody lives at that premises. And I have concern about the amenity of the area, particularly for those neighbours that live close by. There is a complete difference between a cafe and a with a maze and a licensed restaurant which has outdoor dining, music, outlandish behaviour perhaps, and therefore the people have bought properties in and around that area for the amenity, for their lifestyle, and next thing you know, we've got a full-on restaurant with up to 120 people at any one time, 7 days a week, with no respite for the neighbourhood, whether it be car parks, noise, and bearing in mind the hours of operation are from 12 till 6. They want it now till 6. It's not just the hours of operation of serving. It is the setup time, the clean-up time going forward or back, whichever way you want, delivery trucks coming and going. And I'm just amazed, I'm sorry, councillors, that you have not taken into consideration the amenity of the people living close by. There has been a alteration of the water course that goes into a dam there. We've had no report from council in relation to the septic system that is there next to a water course, which may have to take up to 120 people at a time, and what that's going to do to the groundwater and ultimately the environment. I know that these young people who have this property have worked tirelessly and very hard, but perhaps their restaurant should be in a commercial area or an area set aside commercially in the Wandillagong area, and that land could go back to farming, which is what it is zoned for. I don't accept the notion that because it has been out of farming for 20 years that it is no longer viable. Modern farming methods and intensive farming methods could make that area viable. So I think I'd like to speak for those people who live in that area and who have to put up with the noise of basically, I suppose, of people having fun. But if there is intoxicated people, in my experience, that is not fun to listen to at any time. So I'm sorry, Councillor Vincent, I cannot support your motion.
Councillor Keeble, you haven't had a comment yet. Would you like to make one?
Thanks, Mayor Forsyth. I probably sit in the boat with Ron there. My thinking around this is, yes, it's in the farming zone, and there's conjecture about which legal person believes it is or isn't in the farming zone and its usage. And even if it was granted a different planning, zoned area in years to come, even if it was low density residential, would we still put a commercial venture in there? Would I want to live next to a restaurant like that? I wouldn't want to. It's too noisy. I wouldn't want to do it. So I understand the complaints from around the residents in the area. Is it a really good business model? It's terrific. Look how busy it has been. Like, it's a great business model. To me, it's in the wrong spot. And it was built before the bike path was built. So it's in the wrong spot. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Councillor Nicholas, you had your hand up.
I know I trying to butt in as well. I think the amenity of the people living around is crucial, and I hear what both Councillor Janus and Councillor Keeble have said. Quite a number of the houses that people live in that are complaining about the change of business have been built after the business too. So there's, it comes and goes, that one. But the only way I could see that a business could work there is with some really strong and abided by conditions. So it's not that I'm not considering the amenity of people around. It's that I think we can do it with conditions. And I think that the wrong spot in terms of zoning, but right spot in terms of the way Wandillagong is. So Wandillagong has things scattered around and has over the years, and doesn't really have a commercial centre and hasn't had one for a long time. And it's close to where kids play. It's close to where the bike path now comes in, or the shared path, whatever it is. That will be going past eventually, but it's still in a good spot for visitors and local people to get to. So I hear, and normally I'm very strong on what the zoning says, and I understand where the council offers are coming from in that respect. And I guess I wish I could just sit on the fence, to be honest, because it's not an easy call. But there's pros and cons for both.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholas. I'll go back to Councillor Vincent for a finalisation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I do want to thank Councillor Janus for his remarks, because absolutely this is not an easy decision, because there are objectors to consider, people who live nearby, and the amenity is absolutely crucial. And that is why in my preamble, I did phrase that, and like Councillor Nicholas has said, that the conditions are key. And there's also a number of authorities that manage a lot of those elements. So noise, with the EPA, responsible service of liquor, the police, I suppose my point is it's these elements with the right conditions, managed by the right authorities in the right operating window, I believe is an appropriate use, and an absolute asset. And I do have one closing remark, which is that the applicants have put this business together in one of the most challenging economic times in history that we have faced. And I commend them from that. They are young locals. And I suppose as a councillor representing our community, I feel that in good conscience, I want to support that in our local community. I want to support that initiative, and show that recognising the planning department's recommendation on zoning, but maybe the zoning is wrong. Things take time to change, and I would like to show our support and grant them the application here. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Vincent. So the recommendation before us is the alternate motion, which would read that council issues a notice of decision to grant a permit under provisions of clauses, etc., as is in the recommendation currently. Can I have a vote on the alternate motion, please? Those in favour? Those against? The alternate motion is actually carried.
Can I call a division, please, Mayor?
Certainly can. Those in favour of the motion? Councillors Kelly Prime, Councillor Forsyth, Councillor Vincent, Councillor Hughes and Councillor Nicholas. Those against? Councillor Keeble and Councillor Janus. Are they recorded, please? Thank you. Moving along. Thank you, councillors. Well discussed. Informal meetings of councillors, item number 9. The recommendation is that a summary of informal meetings of councillors for September 2021 be received. They were briefing sessions, a hearing of submissions and a briefing session and a briefing session. Could I have a mover, please? Councillor Keeble, Councillor Janus. Those in favour? Carried. Thank you very much. Item 10, general business, starting with Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, thank you to the other councillors for allowing everyone to have an opinion and voice and feel comfortable to do so. I think discussions like this really do show that we do have a diversity amongst us, and opinions are always noted and taken into consideration. So I thank you for being able to do that. One thing I want to point out to the general public is to not be shy in putting in input and discussions, regardless of what viewpoint you have on something that is happening. We are community spokespeople. We are here to advocate for you, whether that's advocating for the greater good, regardless of whether we believe in it or not. That is something that we are here for. And if it's not one councillor that you can approach, there's 7 of us that you can definitely address in matters that pop up. And also on the little things as well. If you're seeing a park bench that's broken, shoot through a quick message or give us a quick call or put in a CRM so that we're aware that it's happening, because it's so easy to sit there and say, oh, that's been broken for weeks. But it could have been fixed weeks ago just by simply noting something. As a perfect example, I noticed that the swing at the Korpunka Park, the kids' swing was, must have been a new chain that was put on, but the swing was put backwards. And I sent in an email and I said, if the swing is backwards, then the parents pushing that child can't watch the water. And the response was, one, I will address that, and two, it probably wasn't even thought of. So sometimes it just takes someone else that's in a position that knows that something needs to be changed as opposed to those doing it. You know, it can be that simple. So I just really want people to feel comfortable that you can address things, and also make note of when you see something good happening, tell us, because if we know that there's input that is being appreciated, we'll do more of it. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Hughes. Councillor Janis.
No, thanks, Mr. Mayor, and I thank Councillor Hughes for those comments in relation to our debate. Good.
Councillor Keeble.
Thanks, Mayor Forsyth. I just want to, general business, just thank and recognise the work of all our Alpine Health workers and Alpine Health as an organisation. You know, there's been some difficult times, obviously, the last 2 years, and this winter's been difficult with the COVID testing at different areas that we've had to do, and now with the vaccine rollout, that they're helping and you know, making sure they get to all parts of our community. So I just want to shout out to them and congratulate them on all the great work they're doing. It's going to become a little bit probably rocky in the next 10 weeks as we manage where we're going through, so everyone look after each other. Be kind, as they say.
Thanks, Councillor Keeble. Councillor Prime.
No, none from me. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Vincent.
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to do a shout out to the business owners around town who've been working hard through the school holidays in particular. Sometimes the Shires, well, Bright's a town I go to, but I'm sure it was reflected in other areas. Sometimes it looks really empty. And then the next day there's people queued up looking for tables, and to watch the staff have to turn them away again and again and again because they can't fit them in because of COVID was just incredible. The politeness and the way the visitors were handled, and my congratulations to all those people who have tried so hard to provide a service in these really trying conditions. So let's get vaccinated.
Was the Chief Health Officer there this time around like he was last year?
Not that I noticed, no.
I'll concur with you, Councillor Nicholas, on that, and about how people are being treated when they come into the place. And I point out that visitors are basically temporary residents. So if they have that attitude, then I'm sure that they're going to be treated really well. So thank you for general business. We're moving on to item number 11, motions for which notice has been previously given. Now, in accordance with Council's governance rules, Chapter 3, Part F, Sections F11, Councillor Nicholas and Councillor Vincent submitted the notice of motion of a climate emergency declaration. I would like to ask Councillor Nicholas if she would like to read this recommendation, please.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor Forsyth. I actually don't intend to read because we've had multiple councillor discussions and multiple staff discussions to shape the motion. So we've had it in front of us for quite a long time, the motion and the introduction. So I just wanted to put it in perspective at the beginning and then go to the motion. It's come after the Climate Action Plan. And I know...
Councillor Nicholas,
Mr. Mayor, I have a procedural motion.
Okay.
We'll deal with the procedural motion first. Councillor Janus, your procedural motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and with all due respect, Councillor Nicholas and Councillor Vincent, I move the matter be laid on the table for 1 month for the following reasons: that I cannot, in good conscience, make an informed decision which will ultimately affect the possible budgetary process going forward and personnel resources that may have to be put into this declaration as a whole. And I'd like to have that 1 month for officers to present a report to councillors. I note that it is in your recommendation anyway, but I feel that I need that report first, and it may also give an indication to me what we have to drop off in officers' work in order to maintain the momentum with a climate action plan. And the words used are emergency, which to me indicate that their works need to be done in a more timely
It's a procedural thing, Councillor Janus.
Yep.
Your procedure is simply that you're asking for an alternate motion to put this current recommendation on the table for 1 month. Is that correct?
1 month. Correct.
Is there a seconder for Councillor Janus's proposal? Councillor Prime. We will vote directly on that. Can I have a show of hands as to those councillors who would like to have this recommendation put on the table for 1 month, during which time I believe that the council officers may come back with some more information. Can I have a show of hands for that, please? Those against? Those abstaining?
Councillor Keeble had his hand up.
Division.
I can't clarify this. Those in favour of putting this aside for 1 month, show of hands, please. And those against putting it aside for 1 month? Okay, it looks like it's being put aside for 1 month. And thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Certainly.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks.
I thought Councillor Nicholas called for a division. Is that
Did.
correct?
I did call for division, yep.
Sorry, Councillor Nicholas, I did not hear you. Okay, could I have a division, please? Those in favour of the alternate motion, which was to set this aside for 1 month, please raise your hands. We have Councillor Janus, Councillor Hughes, Councillor Prime and Councillor Forsyth. And those that are against that motion for putting aside for 1 month are Councillor Keeble, Councillor Vincent and Councillor Nicholas. Division has been called and called. Thank you.
Mayor, may I just ask a question? I don't know that's a point of order, but a question on that. Will the officers still prepare the report, the information? My understanding is that the information requested in point 3 of the motion will be prepared in line with what Councillor Janus has requested in order to vote. Is that the correct understanding? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
That is also my understanding, Councillor Vincent. And as has been pointed out at an earlier stage in our meeting tonight, I think Mr. Bird pointed out that they started on the housing thing well before council even directed them to do that. And having seen the division here tonight and the recommendation and where it stands, I feel that the council officers will definitely go away and do a lot of hard work on this and also keep councillors informed during the briefing sessions.
Thank you.
So I have another question too. So this same motion comes back
Correct.
next month, but it has a figure in it instead of number 3.
It will have
A roadmap attached, the background as background.
A roadmap attached.
Yep.
As opposed to what you're asking, I think, in the recommendation number 3. Yes. Everything else would be the same.
And it would come in now as instead of a notice of motion, it would come in as a standard council agenda item.
I believe that is correct. Mr.
Yep.
Bird?
That's what happened last time.
So Mr. Mayor and councillors, we will provide a report which outlines the roadmap, and whether it comes in as part of the agenda or as a separate part, we will determine it in due course. I'd like to take that one on notice. But the important thing is that the information will come to councillors for the information they have requested in relation to this matter.
Mr. Mayor, if I may comment that I'm seeing as I'm the mover of the motion, and the motion is not to speak against Councillor Nicholas's recommendation per se. I wanted further and better particulars in order to make a better informed decision.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. CEO.
I think it will come back into the section if I just thinking it through. That extra 25 seconds help me. Thank you.
Yes, no, it will. It will come back into notices of motion, but it will look basically the same as this, but we'll be able to change item 3 because we will have that report with us at that time. So you won't be directing anybody to come back later on. That's my understanding of it, or it just becomes a motion.
Perhaps we shouldn't be trying to decide exactly what it's going to look like right now.
No, we do know it's coming back. Okay, I think that's the take-home message here. Thank you, councillors. Item number 12: reception and reading of petitions.
So,
I believe there is something. Yes, Councillor Keeble.
Mayor Forsyth, if I may, reading of reception and reading of petitions. There has been a petition sent in by the Mount Beauty Golf Club, and they're looking at the support that's been given to them in regards to the development at the Mount Beauty Golf Club, and they've also provided letters of support from the local community. And I believe the petition is on the table to be discussed, and I'll probably hand over to Will, I guess.
Mr. Jeremy.
Thank you, Councillor Keeble. So I can reiterate what Councillor Keeble just advised. We received a petition yesterday evening. I haven't counted the signatures, but I'm advised by the proponent that it has 360 signatures, which represents 17% of the population of Mount Beauty and Toowoomba South who are above the age of 18 at the 2016 census. So it's a significant number of signatures for a small community. The petition reads, "We, the undersigned, are local community members or visitors to the region who support Mount Beauty's Golf Club's funding application for and development of the UK VRCH at the Mount Beauty Golf Club." And the UK VRCH, I note further up the petition, is the Upper Kiewa Valley Recreation and Community Hub. So it's not asking for a particular action of council other than a noting of the community support that is present for this development.
And will that be forthcoming?
So what I would like to propose, so the usual process is that we note a petition and then respond to it the following month. However, in this case, I understand that the proponents are considering an application for funding to the Black Summer Bushfire Funds, and that closes tomorrow. What I would like to propose to council is that we deal with this matter in the council meeting this evening, if council would like to do that. I did circulate earlier today the wording of a potential motion that council might like to consider, which we could take a vote on this evening, which would essentially potentially address this petition without the need to revert back in the November meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Keeble, do you have the wording for that motion?
I don't have it right in front of me. I can find it, or if Will has it, he could read it out.
Yep, so I can read the 2 points. So the first point,
Thank you, Mr. Jeremy.
petition. The petition to support the development of the Upper Kiewa Valley Recreation and Community Hub at Mount Beauty Golf Course be considered at this council meeting. And second, the council notes the community support for the hub, which is located on land owned by the Mount Beauty Golf Club.
Councillor Keeble, would you like to move that? Thank you. Can I have a seconder for that? Seconder, someone? Councillor Prime, thank you. Is there any discussion required on this?
Well, other than to say there is a lot of community support for this particular venture. It will provide a different venue, will provide employment and economic, injection into the area given the COVID and the spaces that we are in. So I fully support their application for this project.
Thank you. Councillor Prime? No? Any other councillors like to make any comment about this? No? In that case, I shall put this to the vote. Thank you. Those in favour of that recommendation? Thank you. That's been carried. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Keeble, and thank you, Mr. Jeremy. We're up to item 13, documents for sealing. We have 7 documents for sealing. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Who likes to sign things? Thank you, Councillor Vincent. Seconder, Councillor Hughes. Thank you. Those in favour? Thank you. That is carried. The next item is a confidential report. So, as that is the case, I will now ask the CEO to close the current council meeting at 7:07, and we will carry on with this confidential report. Thank you all of those in Zoom land who have partaken of tonight's meeting.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, there's a requirement for you to vote on the closing of the meeting.
Oh, sorry, I thought I got all of that. On the signing on the documents for sealing?
Sorry, on the confidential report, I understand there's a requirement for councillors to vote on a motion that you'll consider this item to be confidential. I have that in my meeting agenda.
Sorry, it's not in front of mine.
The recommendation there in number 14.
Number 14, yeah.
Because with versions of the legal evidence meeting. The meeting be closed. All right, then. So can I have a mover to close the meeting, please? Thank you, Councillor Vincent. Councillor Keeble. Those in favour? Thank you very much. Meeting will be closed at 7:08.